Now we're going to another important part of our work, namely to look at things more from an economic side, again based on observations that we have thanks to the work of our Department for Market Information, which is headed by Gilles Fontaine, who sits here to my left and who will moderate the next panel, on which you have, and I go from the outside, you have Boštjan Ikovic. He is actually, I told you we would try to bring the perspectives of the industry in, so there is a producer's perspective. He's a producer then more than 14 years with us media, but actually he is here especially because he's also a CEPI Board Member and also part of the Association of Film Producers of Slovenia. Then next to him we have Marianna Scharf from Netflix, where she works as Senior Director and Head of EU Public Policy. And when you look up Netflix, you come across this wonderful slogan, which I therefore quote, I think it might come up again: at Netflix we want to entertain the world. I add the question, with European works? Next to her we have Bérénice Honold. She is chair of EFAD Policy and Strategy Working Group, and she's also advisor in international affairs at the FFR Germany. And I think she can bring a lot of insight also because of her two heads with I think mainly French education and a lot of German background. So I'm very curious to see what she will tell us. And then next to her you will find Gilles. He's director at ACT, and I want to rename ERA into ERO because he was someone who didn't even know he was on this panel when he got up this morning. So special thanks already at this point for that. And why is he all of a sudden here? Well, he had to chip in for Heiko Zysk from Pro7 Media Group, who got stuck in Germany. Not because delays of the train, no. This time the weather doesn't like us Germans. I'm German myself, so I can allow myself to say so. So the Bundesbahn is innocent. And thanks again for having made it possible that we also have a broadcaster's viewpoint. And with that, I disappear, and Gilles, over to you.
Thank you, Susanna, and good afternoon. We have titled this panel from a kind of emphatic way, how has our reading of the audiovisual sector changed? Meaning changed since the first discussion took place when for the revision of the AVMSD. And as I like numbers, I would like to share one number which is to me an hint that the landscape has quite changed. At the observatory, I don't know exactly why, but we try to count the number of different films which have been screened in 2022 in cinemas, on TV or on VOD, not necessarily theatrical film, and we came to the kind of overwhelming figure of 128,000 different films which were on offer, including close to 50,000 produced in the European Union. And I was personally kind of amazed by the quantity, and again I took it as a an hint that things have probably changed. And that's what I would like to do for this panel, to review, discuss how some of the basic principles that help us trying to understand the audiovisual sector may have changed over the last years, and we will deal with 4 different topics, and I will immediately go to the first one. And the first one is called audiovisual services, linear, on-demand or hybrid. Of course, in the first panel there was a discussion about the different rules applying to both, but I have a more fundamental problem, basically, is that when I look at a series of audiovisual services, I just cannot say if they are linear or if they are on demand. On the one hand, we have the so-called replay services of the broadcasters who are now no longer replay services but truly on-demand services. On the other hand, we have on-demand platforms proposing also fast channels, so linear. So I have just some practical difficulty to understand now the difference. And so my first question will go to you, Era. Yeah. Does it just make sense to have two categories of services? Yeah.
You guys really hate me now. Last one looked in and first one to speak. Yeah. So, I mean, ultimately, broadcasters operate the vast majority of VOD services in Europe. So, indeed, the distinction is at least a little bit arbitrary. What I can tell you is that during the last revision of the AVMSD, we're already advocating for a more technology-neutral approach that essentially doesn't distinguish between the two. What really is key is, do you have editorial responsibility or not, ultimately? But now when it comes specifically, because that's the topic of the conference, when it comes to the promotion of European works, the real question is, well, should there be a quota at all? Not to what degree should we differentiate between VOD and linear? I can tell you that at the ACT we've argued since 1989, so since the association was created, that the answer is no. Quotas are neither effective nor relevant to achieve the promotion of European content. So we'd rather have something more flexible. So ultimately what we think should be the way forward is a more, let's say, a market-driven approach than quota.
So in other terms, my question is irrelevant because you don't want quotas. I will ask the same question to you, Marianna. I have not read that Netflix was planning to launch linear fast channels, but still I would like to hear a comment on that.
Yeah, first of all, a big thank you to both the Observatory and the Free State of Bavaria for having us today, and it's great to see a full house. Maybe before I immediately answer your question, just a few words of introduction. As Netflix, we've been present in all 27 EU member states since 2016. We strive to be a long-term, committed partner to the local creative communities. To date, we've worked with over 400 European producers through a mix of originally commissioned content, acquired content, and licensed content. And I really want to stress that we invest foremost in European content because viewers want to see content from their home country. And maybe just one general word also on AVMS that's been mentioned a lot today. We strive to comply virtuously. What does that mean? Well, for example, when it comes to Article 13, Paragraph 1, the content quota, we don't cut our catalogue, we add amazing content. And same goes for 13.2. So, coming back to your question, I think, look, there was a very clear choice made by the European co-legislators in 2018 to extend several aspects of linear regulation to the non-linear world. And that was a choice. Despite that, I would say that some objective differences remain. One example is complying with a percentage-based quota. It's different if you have a 24-hour grid than if you have thousands of titles changing on a daily basis. It's just a different story. But I would say despite the differences, what we think is really important is if you look at the raison d'être of the directive, the core principles, which are, robust country of origin, media plurality, media diversity, protection of minors, protection of consumers, that is common. That is common to linear and non-linear, and that should remain the same in the future too.
Thank you. I would like to switch the point of view with you, Boštjan. From a producer point of view, does it basically make a difference to work with the linear world and with the on-demand world?
Also, thank you to be here. I hope you're going to be happy. I'm not sure now because of this question. So, Slovenia is only 2 million of population. So that is meaning that is dividing what is linear hybrid and the other stuff. We cannot choose so much about it. So the film producers in Slovenia also doing documentary films, series, short films, helping the students and so on. So basically what I want to say is we are always trying to do what is necessary to do it, to survive, to keep going, to be on the map. So we don't have so much divided those things, maybe the others can.
Thank you. Bérénice, would you like to step in on that discussion?
Just, obviously from the funders' point of view, we're not totally in line with the fact that what is relevant. From our point of view, we can say that there is probably an alignment between the two kind of viewings. I mean, just last week there was an article in Germany concerning consumption, that streamer kept catch up on private broadcasts in terms of viewing. So obviously there is a shift in the consumption. That, however, I mean, from a funder's point of view, and again, like you said, the purposes of cultural diversity in the AVMSD, we consider that obviously we shouldn't, drop the quotas, but rather align on a higher scale.
Clear enough, thank you. Let's immediately move to a second topic, or even a second definition, and it's about audiovisual works. We use this very large term to encompass, in my view, very different genres of programming. And of course, I'm not naive. I understand that there is many bridges between film, TV series, and so on. Still, from a more industry perspective point of view, I do see a lot of differences in terms of financing, business model, structure, consolidation, and so on. So my question is really, yes, are audiovisual works, within audiovisual works, are film and TV series really the same, and should be addressed from a promotion of European works from the same standpoint? Boštjan, I would like to start with you. Is it the same to produce a film or a TV series? To put my question much simpler. It's a different. One it's like a marathon, and the other one it's like a long way of running. So film, when we're doing the film, it's a much bigger budget than for the series, and the series is making more as industry, and you know it, where to put the camera and so on. So everything you basically know how to do it and where to do it. You really think about it before. And the film is, you need to think in front of it, and sometimes you also need to improvise with something, because if you compare to the budget that you have like $500,000 in cash, or maybe the specific country for the Europe, we still have the cash money, we still have the national studio which is called VIBA, so we get the equipment, we can get some post-production there, and it's making evaluation of it, let's say 200,000 euros from VIBA in evaluation, that will rent the cost and everything, and $500,000 in cash. And altogether then this is some kind of investment in country in film. Now this is also, we have only one fund which is supporting us for developing screenplay, developing for the project. It means that you develop of everything, looking at the location, actors, co-producers and so on. And then is the production part. So these are the 3 steps that we can have it, and this is only one film institute that we have, a Slovenian Film Center, it's the name. For the production part can be co-producer from homeland, it's national television, and the rest of it for the televisions is, which are not national, they're private, which is the biggest one in Slovenia is Pro Plus. They can be just part, they give you some money, they give you some space in marketing, advertising and so on. But the problem is you cannot combine national television and private television, so it's impossible to cooperate with them together because of the laws and everything. They want to have this space for themselves. So
going back, it's harder to make series, you have less money, and at the end is the product it still need to be, but the film is, for me, more beautiful, but it's heavier to make. Shorter time, shorter money, and so on. But yes, it's different. You will find a few companies in Slovenia which is having only one part, or film or the series, but most of it is the same, like 70%, let's say, that you can do both. All three things that you have, like DVS, VOD, and so on.
So same companies, same directors, same screenwriters, but an economy which is very different.
Yeah, more or less same companies, the writer, director, and DOP is yes, the same, but the economy is different and the source is different.
Okay.
So if you have any money, I can give you my bank account for series.
Okay, it's a call for co-production, right? Bérénice, again, do you consider that we are talking chiefly about audiovisual works? Of course, some countries have extended their direct public support to TV series, others have not. So what's your view on that?
Well, I think the question refers to the way also it is exploited, the work, from a theatrical or non-theatrical. That's, I think, the basic question underlying this. From an FFA point of view, it is clear that we stand for cinematic exploitation, and because our whole system, the levy system that was explained earlier, is dependent on the levy paid, so that more than 5,000 cinemas in Germany are generating revenues and can provide us with financial aid. Also, I think it was just said, the financing of the project itself is quite different. So the FFA is financing only the films that are going to cinema and that generally have a certain way of financing. It's minimum guarantees if they're lucky and a very specific way to finance. But we are aware that most of the production companies in Germany are needing a portfolio of different kind of content. So this is not the FFA, but it's a ministry that's still in the whole ecosystem. We also have schemes that support the non-cinematic works via GAPF, most of you are well aware of. So I would say that from a fund's point of view, it's important to keep this portfolio, especially as long as also the way it's exploited on the long run is very difficult between, on one side, the films where usually producers do have rights that they can use on a later moment, and on the other ones where you usually don't have those rights and where you get paid for the work and then it's done. So right now we have this mixture that we try to keep alive, that if regulation changes, maybe that will also change.
Am I right to summarize by saying you're still in an approach for a selective cultural-driven support for cinematic film, and more going to more support to industry tax incentive driven for the rest, or is it oversimplifying?
Well, we always hope to do both. But right now the scheme that in Germany we do have is more for the commercial. It's to attract investments.
Thank you. Era, my personal feeling was that regarding film, broadcasters used to be more in a passive situation as partners, whereas for TV series, things have changed, and they see more as an essential asset. So that's another dimension I'm adding to my question. Is there again a difference between your approach to film and to TV content?
I think you'd be lying to say that they're exactly the same. So of course there are differences, but when it comes to actually the underlying question was to how is it promoted, the promotion of European works. Ultimately, what's key from our perspective is flexibility, and to make sure that essentially it's up to individual visual media service to decide how to roll this out. The bottom line is that we invest in content that can be different types of content for different types of players, and therefore we have an incentive to also promote it. And you have different content strategies. Some will be more focused on more cinematographic works than others. Others will focus on TV series essentially, and some will focus on more on the entertainment and scripted side. And I think what's key from our perspective is with regards to the differentiation between the different content types, is not just about films or series. Culture is broader than just fictional works. Entertainment, more broadly, is a key driver of culture and diversity too. And policies should not, as a principle, discriminate between different business models and types of content.
Thank you. Marianna, would you like to? I mean, Netflix is probably the archetype of the bridges between the two genres.
Yeah, that's a nice way to put it. But I think our goal is to support creators, to support producers, tell the stories they want to tell, whether that's a film or a series. And a great example of that is Nico Molenau, who did the series Ferry, and did the movie Undercover, and is now again working on his latest project with us, which makes us very proud. Something that has been touched upon, but it's that we also believe that both series and films play a very crucial role when it comes to representing European culture. And I think earlier, Suzanne, you even equated culture to values, right? And we see it. I mean, if maybe we turn just to Germany to take two examples, last year we did an amazing film called All Quiet on the Western Front. And we also did a super series called The Empress, and what do they have in common? Both extremely high production value. They both had extremely wide viewership. They were critically acclaimed with Academy Awards, Emmy nominations, wins, and they were both done in partnership with local producers. So, we see that series can really convey European heritage, European music, European culture, European architecture to the same degree, if not even sometimes more, right? Because they can be longer. And we've seen that time and time again with shows like Lupin and High Water. Maybe just one final note is that on our service itself, we don't differentiate between films and series when it comes to prominence, and we don't differentiate between the two when it comes to ratings.
Thank you. Time to move to our subtopic, which is the elephant in the room. Francisco was kind enough to leave most of the discussion for this panel. So use the logic we have talking about audiovisual works. Now I think we should have some minutes on European audiovisual works. Some of the figures that we have at the observatory point to two ideas. Basically that the shares of EU and other European works have rather grown in parallel than showing some competition between the two. And the second thing is the almost total heterogeneity of the situation between the member states. If you look at, I will not comment the figures in detail, but if you look at the relative share of domestic, other EU and other European, there are plenty of reasons which explain why the situation is different. Proximity of language, level of national production, and so on. So ultimately, to me the question is there actually a competition between the EU and the other European work? Because I do not find evidence that there is a direct competition between the two. So ERA, again, let's try to take it from again maybe a competition or substitutability point of view. Yes, do you believe that there is a trade-off between EU and non-EU European content?
To make it short, no. But what is clear is that there is viewer demand for UK works, and that UK works fill a very important niche when it comes to acquisitions of content that people want to see, and it is at the same time cheap, let's say, to fill catalogs. So I think, to be a great question, is there competition between the two? But I think you mean, are we competing in terms of investments rather than maybe viewership? Well, research, including from the EO, we think shows that ultimately the overwhelming majority of investments in European works and in UK works also comes from national broadcasters for domestic audiences, and that includes in the UK. So whatever change in the future of definition with regards to the scope, when it comes to this content that's essentially original, created for a domestic audience, that will not change, because the national broadcaster primarily serves their own domestic audiences. So a huge sort of share of the money invested in UK works cannot, as far as we're concerned, move anyway to Europe. So it's a bit moot from our perspective. However, what is clearly key for us, but is obvious, is that UK works are really essential, in particular for broadcasters to fill their schedules. In particular, because there is an audience demand and it's cheap, so it enables the filling of catalogs. Of credit. That is not necessarily as much the case for VOD, or you can always cut at the tail end and adjust. But for the broadcasting side, it's essentially, we don't have the luxury of moving on that front. So, yeah.
Just to be clear, it is cheap compared to what?
Compared to, let's say, other countries, it's talking about a particular drama series. It's cheap in terms of acquisition, not in terms of production. The production is obviously the budgets are there, but in terms of acquiring the rights to fill a grid, it is cheaper content.
Just to be clear, it's cheaper for a given level of quality, I guess. No? I guess you could find a country from other EU members providing.
Of course, but as
I'm just trying to be precise.
As a service provider, we can't really compromise on the quality, because ultimately we need to be competitive. We need to drive audiences. So that's not really something that we can move.
Thank you. Boštjan, do you feel as a producer that there is a competition based on the origin of the work? Do you feel in competition with other Slovenian producers, with other EU producers, with other European producers?
We have one big problem that we're feeling that we're the opposite way. So in the way that financially, let's say that in the French it's film approximately, if I'm not wrong, 8 to 10 million for one film. This is the money approximately that you have it for 2 years for the whole film fountain system. So what is the competition for us? Is the competition maybe for our part of this area of the world, let's say the ex-Yugoslavian country, Romania, Bulgaria and so on. We don't take it as a competition, we take it, is it possible to make the co-production, is it possible to do something with this? So we take it in the opposite way. Yes, of course we are growing up, we are rising, it's not so bad maybe that I'm introducing you, but anyway, it can be feel the competition, but not in the way that it's feeling like France, Germany, Spain, Italy. We are 2 million of population, we have our own language, which is 60% different than Croatian and so on. So in the competition, in the money and this stuff, it's hard to talk with us as a competition. But I would like to invite the Germans, if they have the problem, to come to us to shoot, because we can make it something really good. No, but as a competition, we don't feel it in that way.
Could you elaborate just a little bit more on co-productions, view from your standpoint? You mentioned co-production.
Yeah, there is a few years ago it was some kind of established that we need to have the co-production. This is very good to have it. So it's meaning that you have from the other countries that you get something, money, actors, directors, authors, and so on. And that you have also the chance when the other fund will give the money or something in it, you will have the chance to show the film there. And there is you are the owner of the film and you will show it in the cinema, TVS, VOD. So this is, in that kind of meaning is the co-production for us.
Okay, I'll come back to you after, or do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just had a quick thought because I'm not sure I fully understood the comment with regards to revenues and essentially the level of revenues being too low on the production side. Because from the figures we got from the EAO, I was under the impression, well actually looked at the figures, that the production side of the AV sector is actually the one that has the highest growth over the last 10 years. I think it's 12% compounded annual growth rate versus 2% for the rest of the sector. So I don't know if I fully share this assessment that the sort of the production side is losing out.
I just want to not nuance what you said, but just provide additional light on our figure. They show also a kind of concentration toward the larger countries. So I don't see a contradiction with the fact that the overall figures are quite impressive. I think that there is something about less dynamics in smaller countries. And that's maybe what explains also the different feelings about these figures. Bérénice, yeah.
Maybe to jump on what you just said, because I mean that's something we saw in the EAO, that those massive investment, especially from streamers, I think I only have the numbers in the head for them, are mainly concentrated on two big countries, UK and Spain, to name them. So I think there is this first competition, if you like to call it that way, between countries to attract the investment. I think that incentives might play a role, also the language probably. I mean, English is obviously an attractive language because it's almost everyone is speaking it and understands it. So basically what we apply as a rule, the less the language is spoken, the more difficult it is to produce an alternate language and to find a market for the films. So it's kind of a natural shift also. The other competition, from what I understand the question, and it's maybe the second elephant of this panel, not really.
That's a lot for us.
A lot of elephants. No, but the quota, obviously, and should UK words be part of it or not, where I really, from an EFAD perspective, we do not have a strong position on that. Just to share it still with you. I know that there are some strong positions on it saying that they should be excluded, including in member states, including, for example, also ministry in Germany is more in favor of exclusion. But what we believe is that the aim of this definition of European work is to promote the European identity. And I'm saying European because UK used to be even EU, they are still European, although they are not EU anymore. So the idea behind it should maybe probably not to link it too much to the geographical area and are they member or not, but to link it to where the IP is, basically who is benefiting from it and who can exploit it in the future. And so what we would like to exploit, because from what I understand also from the previous panel, we have a little time to discuss the whole AVMSD topic over the next months and years, is to exploit a little bit this idea of how we can have this cultural diversity without giving, and this is the main problem from EFAD perspective, but also Germany, is to have this kind of a gate for US and UK co-productions, because from what I understand of the media outlook report, it is still the fact that most of the UK titles accounted in the quota are co-productions with the United States. So this is a little bit the balance that we would like to find when it comes to definition.
So more being more specific on the definitions, more taking into account this topic of IP than necessarily going to a sharp decision with or without. That's, yeah, okay. Marianna, would like to also comment on?
Just maybe a quick word on what we know and what helps us design our catalogue. You know, we know audiences have some things in common, and we know our audience, and we know that our members primarily watch local content. And so, you know, if we're licensing a title in Germany, we will do it with the German viewer in mind. If we're commissioning a title in Poland, we will do it with the Polish viewer in mind. And then we also know that 70% of our members will watch content from another country. So just to add that.
Okay. Thank you. We move to the fourth and last topic. Oh, yeah.
Because I can't let go of the suggestions that maybe we should look at IPR, IP restrictions as an alternative to geographical scope. It's just a disguised way to do the same, except worse. So from our perspective, that would be a hard no and a catastrophe. But hopefully this is not something what, essentially
You should elaborate a little bit because...
Well, I mean, the idea that we should, as an alternative of excluding the UK, introduce restrictions on who owns IP in the definition of European works. That would open its own whole can of worm, mix two directives that are, in theory, separate, and complicate the whole discussion. Essentially, this is not, from where we stand, not a sort of softer way to do the same thing, but rather pulling out the bazooka and potentially harming the whole ecosystem in the process. So I just want to make the point that we definitely do not share this assessment. Thank you.
Point is made. Although I don't understand exactly if you worries about compliance and having to look at the precise IP situation of each work, or a question of principle. Talking about bazooka, is it the compliance which is at stake, or it's rather a question of philosophy?
Well, I mean, first, I would say it's both. The bottom line is we are in favor, and in the audiovisual system, contractual freedom is key, and sort of stepping on this can have quite drastic side effects. But we also know where this is coming from. I think there are other discussions, let's say, that you will be aware that are happening, and it's not all about, cultural, let's say, sovereignty of Europe. It's also about essentially supporting, advantaging some stakeholders to the detriment of audiovisual media services.
But let's be transparent, you're talking about the discussion about the statute of independent production, right? Okay, no, just... Thank you. Let's move to the last topic. We have been talking about investment obligation for broadcasters. We have been talking about quotas. Indirectly, through the levies, we have been talking about direct public support. I would like, even it's not under the remit of the AVMSD, to introduce the tax incentive in the discussion. We have some figures at the observatory which show that at least until COVID, the share of tax incentive in the financing of European films are very significantly increased. It's pre-COVID data, it's pre-investment obligations for streamers, so I'm just giving this as an indication. Still, we can see very different mixes of direct, of public support between the different countries, and I wonder what are your views on the mix of public tools for promoting the publication, the production of European works. Bérénice, would you like to start on that?
As you already mentioned, Gilles, we don't believe that there is a one-size-fits-all in terms of mix between the three of them. This is why it's very difficult to give a complete answer on how it should be done. Obviously, markets are different, the maturity also of the ecosystem and of the audiovisual infrastructure maybe a factor to keep in mind. But just as a general statement, because well, that's more or less all I can do at that stage, and all I can say is that the three instruments have very different themes and following different roles. When we talk about tax incentives, and I mean, some are calling it right now a race to the bottom or not, this is another question, but there is a race because countries want to attract investment, and it's very important for the local industry. There are studies that say that it generates income, that it's a very variable system, and also it has the advantage of being very clear, it's usually automatic, so it's money that people can rely on, and it's it's crucial for the financing of audiovisual production. But obviously the purpose is more economic than cultural, so here the idea is, I mean, it's maybe a bit exaggerated, but it's more a short-term benefit. So you attract the production, it comes, it shoots, and it leaves. We have examples in Germany where we that can get two, which is the supply and support, where it's not even, I mean, culturally it is really not very German and doesn't contribute to the German identity whatsoever, and it's not even big box office hits, so it's really, the aim can just be to keep the infrastructure alive. This is why it's also very important to complement it with direct public funding, which is usually, not always, but usually more, has an orientation on the cultural side, and which then aims to compensate for that, so that productions that maybe wouldn't fall under the incentive schemes, or maybe two, but there we are talking about the identity, we are talking about newcomers, we are talking about experimental, and all those things that might not have this economic view. That would be then the second role, and I think this is the most important interplay. I mean, why is it right now going up more on the economic side? I think this is definitely something that we have to reflect on, because there are some negative downsides of this. Prices are rising not only because of that, there's inflation too, there's two costs, especially the first one, which had a huge impact on the production costs. Shortage of skilled workers, I already mentioned that one. Anyway, so there are also some downsides, but as long as the countries evaluate the system and consider that there is an economic benefit, those, I think, schemes will continue to exist and will continue to be elaborated. I'm not aware of any EFAD member, at least, who don't have any direct funding anymore, so I think it's still crucial to have this interplay. And obviously, the investment obligation can come as another element in order to orient a little bit more the private financing of films in a certain direction. And from our perspective, it can be a tool when wisely applied to redirect the money that is on right now, because the market is basically floated with money, but it's only going, as we had it in the topic before, in certain countries, maybe also in certain kind of content. And so we believe that this could be, when we put the three together, could be an efficient way to have content very diverse for everyone, but also have economic models that are viable and where there's funding.
Thanks a lot. The word tradition was mentioned in the first panel, and I think here also it seems that the different countries have different trajectories in terms of balancing between the several categories of support, right?
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, the example of France was cited, it's very famous. So I think it was only logical for them to extend obligations of investment to, for example, streaming platforms, as they have it for a long time, also for TV shows. I mean, it's not a secret that in Germany we're thinking of introducing an investment obligation. Well, it's not exactly the FA thinking, it's the ministry, but we're trying to also think a little bit about it. But anyways, you can also change in your approach given current circumstances of the market. What we see also in Germany is that there is a lot of pressure on public financing or public funding because, as I said earlier, the prices are getting higher, but the level of funding is staying the same. So there is a category of production that is having really big difficulties to find the financial sources, and we still believe that they should exist. All the diversity of the audiovisual landscape. So, yeah, this can be a way to also make this.
Okay, thanks. Eran, do you have a view on a correct mix?
Correct mix? Sure. Well, first, I just maybe a quick comment. I don't know if the term direct public support is really the best way to call it when most of the money doesn't actually come from public coffers, but from essentially private actors via levies. But we've just learned that it's a tax, so I guess my point is moot. Now when it comes to the best mix of support, I mean clearly we do see market-driven solutions such as tax incentives as probably the best way to support a healthy production market and to encourage investments in European content. The recent boom using tax incentives, for instance, in Spain to attract production, we think is a great example of how successful those can be. Generally, I think you will know that financial obligations and quotas we do not feel contribute in a helpful manner because they contribute to inflation costs, and we've seen over the past 2 years drastic increases in production costs and access to sets, etc. We do feel that those contribute greatly to that, but also because they deviate investments to film funds whose ability to select successful projects is sometimes questionable. So generally, we're very supportive of a mix that's lean in particular on tax incentives. Thank you.
We are close to the conclusions of this panel. So the same question for you, Boštjan. Is there a perfect mix? And then we'll ask Marianna.
We wish to have the perfect mix. Of course, we also have it like the others mentioned, tax rebate. We have the tax rebate when somebody comes to Slovenia to shoot it, as we know how it works. I will not explain this. What is concerned that we're still at the beginning of some things like extra budget money, which is supposed to become our obligation and obligations of VOD and the other platforms, which is coming like, I don't know, Netflix, Amazon, Disney, and so on. The first problem that is that basically the Slovenian language is not existing only for HBO, and I think it's some for somebody else. So I would like to also invite Netflix to just to have the menu in Slovenian language. I know that there are 2 million only, but so what is my thinking here is that we try to do the public mix. It's, as I mentioned before, we have it for two, let's say, two supports that we can have it for the film. One is Slovenian Film Center, the other one is TV. And there's a place, as I mentioned, if you have a co-production that somebody will come to shoot in Slovenia. It's a lot of work for the commercials because Slovenia is very small and it's very quickly to moving. By the tracks you have only 2 hours, so it's really quickly to go to the mountains, to the seaside and so on. And what I want to say is, yes, it would be great to having the public mix support, to have it obligations. We also have the strategy which is down to 2020-30 year. And there is also the numbers and figures and so on. And we also want to convince the government to also to support and give us a little bit more money in that. We are maybe specific, small is good, small is bad, so in that kind of way. And the mix would be great if it's possible to take it from the other countries, like we have it in CEPI, for example. It's very good that we can share to each other from, I don't know, Spain, Italy. Italy is our neighbor, so it's very good. And Austria, it is a bit complicated to have the co-production, but anyway, to have the mix support, as you mentioned it, we're trying to get the best of it, what is possible. So My concern is I never want to discover once again hot water because somebody did it. I just want to move it on. Or I never want to say that somebody is guilty that we don't have any agreement of this. Basically, I don't care if they didn't understand each other. I just want to forget this and want to move on and to have what is possible to do the best for the country, for the film, because we're from the film, also the family from film. I couldn't escape film, that's one of the reasons. So mix would be great if it can go in the right direction.
Thank you. Marianna, right mix?
You know, we do believe that every player within the ecosystem has a role to play in supporting the European audiovisual industry, and we think that there's many ways to do that. We also need to balance our business model with investment obligations. We still believe that organic investments in a competitive market, and I was very happy to see your report last week that confirms that the market is competitive, you know, are the best tool to create amazing content sustainably. I think if policymakers decide that there's still a need for market intervention, then, you know, we would ask them to consider all the effects that that can create. And I think, you know, some were mentioned here, but we are seeing inflationary effects. We are seeing really heightened complexity that can de facto then be a barrier to entry. We're seeing crew shortages. And so I like this question of the mix. If maybe I could throw another element in the mix, it would really to be, you know, to take a step back, what do we need in the ecosystem? And I think, you know, the point that hasn't been mentioned yet also is the pipeline, right? Because we need people who can work with us in this world, and we are seeing shortages around Europe. So we need to also make sure to fund learning and development, skilling, upskilling, you know, all those important things. We're a very small piece of the puzzle. We have a program called Creative Equity. It's $100 million in a fund, and we try to partner with local organizations to make sure that we have a diverse pipeline of people we can work with. So we've worked with La Cinémathèque, we've worked with Accademia del Cinema, and I wanted to put this in because we want to continue making the best content and need people to work with.
Thank you very much for all of you. It was really interesting to listen to all this point of view. We are finished with panel number 2, and I therefore give the floor to Susanna Nikotchev.
I think this was well-deserved applause, so thank you to these great panelists. Thank you, Gilles.
Thank you all. I thought about 2 or 3 words how to summarize a bit what we have heard. I have to say it's difficult and at the same time it is easy because one could state that not too much has changed. We're still discussing very similar questions, but maybe from very different angles. So at the beginning, for example, the question, what's about the level playing field? I think it's still one that we will see that might have a little renaissance. As the markets develop, we have to analyze, therefore, again, what are the special characteristics of services that where we differentiate the legal rules, what sets them apart, what justifies intervention and what kind of intervention. So level playing field somehow a hot topic and evergreen. But also competition, maybe with a shifted focus in terms of territory, EU and European. Is this different? What is it? Between possibly different support systems, and well, if we follow the last idea, between different stages of where help is needed, so also along the chronology. So here quite some angles, but in the end what I think is and will always be the underlying question is how do we best reconcile economic and cultural goals. This won't go away, and I found it very interesting in this regard, and that's maybe my last observation, that here we have this famous elephant, and it's a very interesting elephant, because on the one hand it asks a question, what culture are we talking about? And it connects it to the territorial question, but also it brings in the same elephant, the economic aspects, if we look at how is UK content actually produced. So, and now you mix this all up and then you have the real question of what is the best mix? And that's not us to answer, but it is going to give the observatory a lot of very interesting work, I'm sure. And we will try our best to come up with figures and with information that can maybe point to what the situation is at the moment when we're going to talk about it again. We will definitely have this as a topic that will continue to stay with us. Now, I think and I hope that you also have a lot to digest after this conference, and I really, really recommend that you use the AVMS digest for doing so. And do not forget your copy, and if there are still copies outside, we have no desire to take them on the train with us to Brussels. So if you know people who will benefit, then please take it. And with this, also last invitation, go and have the good habit to look at our website. We're producing all year round, and it's unfortunate that we can only come once a year here to Brussels to share that with you, but we're ready to come again next year. And again, thank you to Bavaria and to our host, and thanks to all of you. You have time to chat a little bit, I guess. The weather is bad. I don't see why you would be in a rush. Bye.